This week on the show.
When you have a slur on your words and swaying your hips, hope we can talk again. Maybe you'll remember this.
Josh White.
I think it was probably towards like end of high school I started actually recording some of the stuff I did, and a lot of that was just like jams. Like I would loop a guitar bit and then kind of play over it.
Musician.
And he started like coming up with like a bit of like a melody and some lyrics, and it was just whatever. It was just us having fun at like 3 a.m. And then I came up with the name Modest Apollo and was like, we should actually start a band. I have a pretty regular group of people I send stuff to, but It's usually just be like, hey, look at this cool thing I did. I'm not looking for any feedback.
I'm not looking for any feedback.
Not looking for any feedback.
I mean, feedback is hard. It's hard to trust people. It really is hard. I've learned a lot from feedback. I've learned a lot from bad feedback too. And I think it makes you stronger too, to just, am I taking this or am I just following my heart?
His new album, Smaller Than Some, available everywhere now.
It never had any intent on it being an album for the longest part of it. And I was kind of write songs. I would either record them because my dad's like, hey, have any new music you've been writing? And I'll be like, let me throw something together real quick. Yeah, it just kind of started falling into place. And then once I think it did click that it was an album, I was like, oh, I need to actually put some real effort in all of a sudden. Yeah.
Let's talk to Josh White on the Very Creative Podcast.
I'm good. Thank you for coming on my podcast. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you too. I guess we've never actually spoken in person or even across the screen until now.
No, exactly. Yeah. We had some technological problems.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Really brings people together, you know?
Yeah. So introduce yourself to everyone before we get started.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Josh White. I'm a musician from Toronto, Ontario. And I released my album Smaller Than Some back in October I'm going under the moniker Other Infinities.
Great. That's awesome. Yeah, I've listened to your album. It's really my style.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's really, really my style. So I was like, I have to have this guy on the show, and I shared it with some friends. And I was like, that's awesome, right? So yeah.
Sick. I'm glad. Yeah.
It's a little Pink Floyd, right?
Oh yeah. I was going for that. We'll probably end up getting into this later, but this is my second album, but it's my first as a solo artist, but my last album was even more like Pink Floyd influence for sure. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I love Pink Floyd. I love, is it Dark Side of the Moon, the album?
Dark Side of the Moon is a jam.
Yeah. It's a great. I'll put the cover up of your album and we can talk about it later.
Yeah. Cool.
Yes, but now, so you're a singer, you're a musician, right? Both of these things.
Yeah, I definitely consider myself a musician more than a singer.
Okay.
But
it's you singing on your album.
It is me singing.
Okay.
Yeah, I just I don't fancy myself much of a singer. I'm more of I can play instruments and someone needs to sing these words. So yeah,
it was really good though.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So how did all that happen? Were you born with music or creative parents or?
Not particular. Like they weren't not creative. My dad's a photographer. My mom was like a hairstylist. So there is some creative juice in there, but I'm the only one that was ever into music.
Right.
Like growing up, I would listen to music and my dad more even would we'd listen to a lot of classic rock and like Pink Floyd, like you said, growing up. But my sister, who's 6 years older than me, she took piano lessons for a while, and I guess she just never practiced and then gave up. And my parents were like, all right, well, we're not doing that. And then my brother got like guitar lessons and bass lessons and had a drum kit for a while, but all of those he kind of gave up on very quickly. So
Yeah.
when it got to the point where I was like, I want to learn guitar, they're like, another one of these. Okay. So my mom just had an acoustic guitar lying around. It's like, we'll pay for like a couple months of lessons. And I think within like 4 or 5 months, I was like, can I get an electric guitar now? And from there, it was just all the mayhem.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I started as an actor, and I was always loving it. And I kept seeing friends in high school or everywhere that I was doing theater. I was like, oh, they like it, but I'm gonna watch them. Like in 6 months, they're gonna give up, you know. And surely they did. I was right most of the time, and I stuck to it. So yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
So
I feel like
where did it go from there?
Well, I took guitar lessons for like 3.5 years, I think.
Right.
At that point, I was pretty strictly just guitar, and I would like sort of write my own songs, but it was more just like, I know how to play these 4 chords, and I'm just going to come up with like a very simple A-B rhyme scheme with no real melody, and just kind of talk it over top of these chords I know. Yeah. Very rudimentary things. But yeah, then I think it was probably towards like end of high school, I started actually recording some of the stuff I did. And a lot of that was just like jams. Like I would loop a guitar bit and then kind of play over it. And then it was also towards the end of high school that I picked up another instrument finally. And I was gifted a piano and kind of like taught myself just the basic chords and stuff and figured it out that way.
Right. And you never, because you said you weren't a singer, so you never got into singing lesson, or?
No, I never did singing lessons. I never really even tried singing until I was in university, I guess like 6 years ago now or so, with my band, Modest Apollo.
Right.
My roommate and I kind of like, we would write the songs together. So we kind of like sing them together, figure out who wants to sing which one. And then after a while, he was clearly the better singer. Like, no, there wasn't even a debate in my mind. He was like, hey, do you mind if I just sing the songs and you can have like creative reign to write all of them? And I was like, okay, sure. So yeah, that's when I was kind of like, yeah, I don't really want to do singing. But then when I started a solo project, I'm like, well, I guess I kind of have to now.
Yeah.
So kind of push it. And I think towards the end of recording this album, I was like, okay, I find my vocals all right. But like even at the beginning, I was like, oof, listening back on tracks, I'm like, this sounds just bad. I don't like this at all. It took a while for me to become comfortable with it.
No, I'll say it again. It's great.
Cool.
It's really great.
Glad you think so.
So you said your parents were looking at your siblings and they were like, oh, we just bought him the guitar, and then he abandons the project. But were they supportive of you being a musician?
Oh yeah. Especially my dad would always be like, hey, let's just go to the music store and see if there's anything fun there. But they've both been incredibly supportive of everything I've put together. When we did our big album release party with Modest Apollo, they brought up my siblings and everything like that, and they bought tickets to the show, and it was pretty great. Yeah, that's great. They've been very supportive this entire time.
Well, that's a good feeling, because I know a lot of artists that are like, their parents are like, you should be a surgeon, or you should be something that makes money. What does that do? So
yeah, I mean, being a musician is not my full-time job. I'm not sure how they react if I was like, I'm just going to quit everything, but I feel like they'd still be fairly supportive. They might just be a little more concerned.
Yeah. Is that your goal though, to be full-time?
I would love it. Yeah, that'd be fantastic if I could just spend my time writing and recording music and have that be my career. Amazing. Yeah. Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk a bit about your band. Was that the next step?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably like the next big step in what led to what I have now. So it was my roommate and I, and like one night after a party, pretty sure I was drunk. He wasn't, but he didn't drink. But yeah, we like came home and we're just like sitting in our basement, and I started like playing this one random riff off the top of my head on guitar, and he's like, I like that. And he started like coming up with like a bit of like a melody and some lyrics. And it was just whatever. It was just us having fun at like 3 a.m. And then I came up with the name Modest Apollo. And was like, we should actually start a band. And from there, like occasionally we'd write and record songs, but still it was just the two of us. We didn't have a bass player or a drummer.
Right.
And then we picked up a bass player like a year later, which is our friend Evan, who's a phenomenal bass player and pianist and guitar player. Like he plays everything. It's all amazing. He started doing bass for us. And we picked up some gigs just by kind of submitting demos. Like it was very rough demos of me like recording on GarageBand. I didn't really know how to mix or anything like that. And we picked up some good gigs. Like I don't know if you know the band Said the Whale.
No.
They're a pretty big like Canadian band. I think they're from, I don't want to say where exactly in Canada they're from because I'd probably get it wrong. But like they've won Junos and stuff like that. And we got the opportunity to open for them, which was pretty great.
Wow.
This was when I was still in school in Peterborough. And that was definitely the biggest show I've ever played. It was like 200 people, maybe something like that. And they were, because they were a big band and we had no idea. We're like, all right, we're opening for some band called Said the Whale. And then we showed up and we're like, oh, there's a lot of people here. This is actually a big deal.
Yeah. How did that go?
It went surprisingly well. We got our, I called up my one friend because we still didn't have a drummer. I called up my friend who lived back in Collingwood. So he drove like 2 hours with his drum kit. We had just enough time for him to like run through the set list for about 2 hours. And I'm like, okay, we have to get on stage now. So with such short notice of that, it went surprisingly well. Like we got a lot of people like buying us drinks and like congratulating us after. And I was like, oh, this feels nice. I like this a lot. Yeah.
Groupies already.
Oh yeah. And then finally, I think it was a year after that we started getting more serious about, okay, this is our last year in university. We should actually record something and figure it out. So I started getting serious about learning how to record. I actually interned at a recording studio as a part of my like credit because I did media studies.
Yeah.
So I was interning at a recording studio and I was taking the stuff that I learned from there and kind of learning how to do it on my own computer. And then one day, like we couldn't get my drummer friend from Collingwood to come and record and it would be a whole thing. Yeah. But one day, my singer and I, Raz, he and I were at a bus stop with just acoustic guitars waiting to go to an open mic. And someone that was in one of my classes, this Russian guy named Dan, he's like, where are you guys going? And we're like, oh, we're going to an open mic. He's like, oh, you play? I play drums. And we're like, that's amazing. Where do you live? And he's like, oh, I live in that building, and points to the building that Raz and I and our bass player already lived in.
Wow.
Like, it was a big apartment building. And we're like, oh, so you live in that building too? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, this is going to be so easy. So we just got an electronic drum kit and recorded it all that way. And after like a year, maybe less than a year, maybe like 7 months or so of just recording, we got 8 songs down. And I spent hours and hours laboring over the mixes and whatnot. And we finally got it out there in 2018. Yeah. Right. But that was a lot of me doing all the music except for bass, drums, and vocals. Yeah. And then I would just kind of go to them with my laptop and be like, okay, sing this part. Okay, I got to go back to my room now. And I go back and mix that all together. Yeah. Yeah.
Was it the same style as your album, or was it totally different?
I think it's pretty different, but when my bass player first heard it, he's like, oh, this brings back some nostalgia for me. I'm like, okay, so maybe it is a little more similar than I thought. I thought it was much more of a departure, but it was the Most Apollo album, which is called Post Social, was a very like just standard rock album. Like it was very guitar heavy stuff. I think there's one song that was kind of piano based, but for the most part, it was like Oasis-y kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So it has similar vibes to what I released a couple months ago, but I feel like it wasn't as fun. It wasn't like a fun upbeat record. That's for sure.
So what was the transition period between your band and your solo thing?
Okay. So
what was the thing?
So we released our album 2018. like March 2018. This is when we're all in our 4th year of university. So we had a big album release party. We got about like 65, 70 people in attendance. It was like a big deal for us. We're like, this is amazing. We finally feel like we made our mark, and then we all graduated and moved away. So that's where it kind of left us like, all right, we can try and record everything remotely at this point, because the closest, the closest people that were together were I was in Collingwood for about 4 months before I moved to Toronto.
Okay. Is that far from Toronto?
It's about 2 hours north.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I lived in Toronto but never explored, so
okay, yeah, it's a very small little like tourist town is what Collingwood is. But yeah, so I was in Toronto and my vocalist was in Mississauga. So that was like not too far. It's doable, but it still was the closest. Our drummer was in Russia, because that's where he was from.
Okay.
So we had Russia, Mississauga, Toronto, and Wawa, which is just like the tippy top of Ontario, so far away. Yeah, so it kind of made things a little bit difficult to pursue. We never officially shut it down or resigned Modest Apollo, but it was kind of like, we'll just take a break until we can actually get together again, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that still in the plans?
I mean, it's not currently in any schedule, but I haven't discounted it as an idea. Like it could happen. I'd be happy with it. Yeah. But yeah, so it's kind of like, I guess at this point I should just try and do this all on my own. I mean, like before I did like 90% of the music myself anyway. So it's kind of like, what's another 10% of just doing this all on my own, you know? I was like, I just have to kind of figure out how to sing things. And the drums are the one thing on the album. There's about 4 or 5 tracks that I got my friend from Collingwood who came up with my band. He actually lives in Toronto now. So I rented a just electronic kit and got him to come over for an afternoon. He laid down like half of the album about. So that's the one thing that was not 100% me, was the drums on the album.
Right. And how did your old band react to your going solo?
I mean, I don't think they had any issues with it, because they kind of understood that we were all in difficult positions to get it done.
But did they like your music?
Oh yeah. My bass player bought 2 cassettes. I released it on cassette.
Okay. Wow. Fine.
He bought 2 cassettes and was like, "Oh yes, I love it. Like, it's great." So he was super into it. Made me happy.
Why cassettes?
Oh, I don't know. I think they're cool. Yeah. And it was also just an easy thing to do. Like when with my last album, we got like a bunch of CDs duplicated, and that was a thing. Right. Like it actually cost us, I think we barely broke even with that, but it was all right. And then this time around, I was like, I've done CDs. I would love to do vinyl, but that's ridiculously expensive to do unless you can get like thousands of people to buy them.
I would though.
Yeah.
I love vinyl.
I have a whole vinyl collection. That's why I definitely want to get it on vinyl.
Pink Floyd on vinyl is the best.
Oh yeah, that's the kind of music that was made for it, for sure.
Exactly.
Sorry,
go.
I keep getting distracted. It was an easy thing to do, so I'm actually making them all myself. I found a like cassette recorder, like player recorder thing, on like Facebook Marketplace or something for $10. And I was like, okay, so I got that from the guy, and I was like, now I just need to get my hands on any old cassettes, really. Like, they don't need to be brand new blank cassettes, because you can record over cassettes and it's not an issue. And then while I was pondering this, one time I was walking to work, and on the side of the road was a box full of like 150 cassettes, and it just said free. And I was like, perfect. That's exactly what I need. Yeah. So I just have a box of cassettes in my room. And then anytime someone wants one, you just have to tape over the top of it, because that's what prevents it from being recorded over. And if you put a piece of tape over top, the thing just lets you record whatever you want over top.
Okay.
So I have the whole like the system set up to go from my computer, and I just can record it all on my own.
Wow.
And I just think cassettes seem cool. They seem cooler than CDs to me, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so fun. So you offered to play us a song from your album. Before we talk about your album, do you want to do that? And
Yeah,
thank
sure.
you, by the way.
All right. No problem at all. I will I just have to switch over to a different sound system here. Just give me 1 sec to get that done.
Yeah.
All right. Does my voice sound more reverby now?
Yeah.
Yeah? Cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Let me just grab my guitar.
What's the song called?
Oh, this is a song called Sober Love. It's on the album, it's much more like piano and synthy, but I kind of stripped it down to just a guitar, which is how it was originally written. So I think it kind of gives you a vibe of how I write songs and how they evolve, I guess. We can talk about that after.
It's actually my favorite on your album.
Oh, really? Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing stays buried forever, especially not the past.
Yesterday is Not Yet Gone, a mystery novel by Gabriel Veiga, host of the Very Creative Podcast. Available now, paperback and digital. GabrielVeiga.com. Buy it now.
We only talk when you got stained lips, when you have a slur on your words and sway in your hips. Oh, we can talk again. Maybe you'll remember this. If you and I were to get together, we would have a time and be happy forever. But that is just a dream, train that's running out of steam. Sober love is what I want from you. Sober love is what you can never seem to do. You have a drink and start to think about me more. But drunk love has the morning feeling so. Looking for love, but I settle for distraction. Hoping for the whole damn thing, but I get in a fraction. I should find a sober love, but that's not who I'm thinking. Oh, 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 oh. People say that I should deserve better, but I follow you to every misplaced letter. 'Cause I am just a man, and I'm doing the best I can. you. But sober love is what you can never seem to do. You have a drink and start to think about me more. But drunk love has the mornings feeling so. Finally talk today, you were in your right mind. Now what I was hoping for, maybe wasting my time on someone that I didn't know, built you up just for sure.
Wow. Awesome.
Perfect.
That's awesome.
All right. Let me
Thank you so much for that.
Oh, no problem. I'm just going to switch back to normal speaking voice now.
Okay. Yeah, so that was Sober Love,
Yeah.
which is a if you listen to the album, it's much more of a kind of piano based and synth based. There is some guitar in it too, but yeah, that's originally how it was written and how I intended it to be. But then that's kind of when I went into that more synthy territory. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
like I could change this a little bit. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. So what was the inspiration behind that song?
This is I am in a happy relationship. This is a song that doesn't really reflect that. It was more of I kind of wrote that one in a character, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it was a couple of years ago that I came up with the opening lines. Like we only talk when you have stained lips. And I was like, oh, that's a cool line. I feel like there probably was someone maybe at that point that I was like, this person only talks to me when they're drunk.
Yeah.
And I wrote that lyric and never did anything with it. And then finally, when I came up with this riff, I was like, oh, that kind of fits. But yeah, so it was kind of written within the mindset of a character that's, I don't know, the person that they think they should be with doesn't talk to them unless they're drunk or high or whatever. And then I thought I'd throw in like the little sort of twist at the end. It's like, oh, we talked when you're sober. I don't like you very much. I think it's kind of I don't know. It's definitely not one of the more personal songs on the album, but it's one of my favorites. That's why I decided to play it.
No, it's really great. I relate to that. I that's why I was listening and I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. And, yeah. You can almost like texting today, and you're like, people text you when they're bored, and I've done that sometimes. So it kind of, you want that love that's constant, not only when you're like drunk or, when they're drunk or, so it's really relatable.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad it resonates with people other than myself. It's kind of the goal. It's what I'm going for.
No, it's a good goal to have when you go into creative stuff.
Yeah. I think this one also, I don't write like silly songs, obviously. Some of them are not very funny at all. But I like to throw little things in there. Like I really found the lyric, I'll follow you to every misplaced letter. I thought that was a really, when I wrote that, I was like, that's a good one, Josh. You did that. That's good. Just because, I don't know, because you follow someone to the letter, but they're drunk. I don't know. I like to try and throw little things in like that, even if they're not very, very funny. They amuse me.
Yeah. Wow. So you That's the one song from your album. Remind the title for everyone of your album.
That was a Sober Love.
From Smaller Than Some, right?
Smaller Than Some. Yeah, sorry. That's the name.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So, how did that album come about? You left your band, and when did you decide to do that? And what was the process?
It's kind of strange how it, like, I don't remember it becoming an album. It was kind of like I would just write songs because I like writing songs, and then
I've heard that. That's usually how it is, right?
Yeah. It never had any intent on it being an album for the longest part of it. And I was kind of write songs. I would either record them because my dad's like, hey, have any new music you've been writing? And I'll be like, let me throw something together real quick. Or I'm just kind of like, ooh, I have a cool idea for this, but I can only do it with like multiple layers. Like I can't just have a guitar and do this. So I kind of would start recording them. And then after a while, I was like, okay,
yeah,
I have enough songs either like written or half written for an album. Might as well just get this together. And yeah, couldn't tell you exactly when or anything like that, but yeah, it just kind of started falling into place. And then once I think it did click that it was an album, I was like, oh, I need to actually put some real effort in all of a sudden. Yeah.
So when you create, like, because you didn't know it was an album, so does it have to still be all the same style? Was it already all the same style?
No, that was the thing. It was a little bit all over the place. And I think once I did realize it was an album, I tried to make it a little more cohesive.
Right.
I still wanted it to be a pretty diverse selection, but I did try, like, some things would have, the song Great Expectations, for instance, on my album.
Great book too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's a very, like, the second half-ish is a very like electronic song.
Yeah.
But it was originally all like guitar, and like I kind of recorded some MIDI string sections on it. So it was very, very much more like Blur than anything else.
Yeah.
It's very like lush string arrangements and stuff like that. I was like, okay, this is cool. And even had like my brother, I think that I sent it to, was like, oh, I think this is my favorite one you've ever done. I was like, okay, cool. And then when I started getting other stuff together, I'm like, I'm glad you like that, but I'm going to change everything about it. And it became like, I changed the drums from normal drums to electronic drums, and the strings all became synths, and it became much more of like a hooky dance thing than anything else. So there were some changes made to the album to make it a little more the same. And then there's only like a few songs that I was like, I don't know how I would change this too much to make it fit.
I mean, if it's already good, you know?
Yeah. Like there's some songs I was like, you know what, I like this song enough that it doesn't need to fit with the rest of the album, kind of thing.
Yeah, I always wonder that when I listen to albums, do people, because I hear all the time that, we just write songs and then it becomes an album, but is it all the same style, and how do you deal with that? It's weird.
I feel like it does depend on the artist. Like, I know, because I'm also a big fan of Jack White. He kind of, I think some of his stuff kind of sneaks into my work too. But he's never been one to be like, this is going to be the style of this album. He just kind of writes a song, goes, oh, I like this song, I'm just going to put it on the album. That's why he is like, his is kind of all over the place. It tends to be with his solo stuff, at least. Yeah.
Wow. And so what was the process to record that album?
Oh, right. Yeah. It's all on this old crappy laptop that I'm viewing you now on.
Oh, you did it all yourself.
Oh yeah. I just have it's actually this system I'm using to give you sound right now. It's just a little 2-input interface.
Right.
A little Steinberg one that I got my hands on.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of either I can mic up my amp with my guitar, or towards the end I started using a lot of sim amps, which are like the Logic has a library of simulated amps, so you can kind of have a wide variety of sounds from it, and they're pretty good. So I started just doing directly into the computer after a while, or into the interface with the guitars. But so it was all done just on Logic on my computer. And I'm also very cheap. I am a cheap bitch. So I spent no money getting a professional to mix it or master it. I was like, you know what? it might not sound as good, but I'm just going to do this all on my own. Like maybe next album I'll spend a little more time. But yeah, it was really just in my either basement or my room in my apartment or this office space. Just kind of laying down guitar or vocals, or there's a keyboard back there. Yeah.
And what was the writing process?
Writing process?
Were you a writer or a songwriter already? Or
yeah, I did write like 90% of my last album.
Okay.
So I felt pretty confident in my ability to write the songs. A lot of the songwriting kind of came together, like lyrics and music very rarely came together at the same time. Like a lot of the time it'd be, ooh, I came up with this riff.
Yeah.
And then while I'm at work washing dishes or something like that, I'll just like, ooh, this line popped into my head. I'll pull up my phone and write it down. And those two events might be like 2 years apart. And then finally I'm like, oh, those fit perfect. That is good. And then I'll kind of put them together. But there are a lot of times, like there's one song on this album in particular, which is called Torchless Panic.
Yeah.
I probably butchered the pronunciation of that.
Yeah,
but
really
anyway,
long name, right?
Yeah, it's a Swedish word. I think it's Swedish.
Okay.
Or Polish. It just means closing gate panic. I think the song was originally called... Shoot, I can't even remember what it was originally called at this point. It was very much just... Oh, you know what it was? Not Old Enough to Know is what their song was originally called. Because it was very much like, oh, I feel like I'm not getting anything done in my life. I feel like I'm not getting anything done, and it's going to be too late. There's kind of a narrative to that song, which is like going to a party that you don't really want to go to, but you go anyway because it'd be better than not being able to have stories to tell later, kind of thing. Which is like, better go to that party because you don't know when you're not going to be able to go to parties anymore. And it became very prevalent in 2020 for some reason. But yeah,
I don't know why.
I'm not sure. That song probably had, between the music and lyrics, 7 or 8 different versions of it. Because there was like the music for it was originally written for a song about not wanting to just go to work 5 days a week so you can have a weekend resting so you can go back to work for another 5 days. Like it was a very, I don't know, like anti-capitalist song almost. I was like, this is something I feel sure about. And then as soon as I started recording it, I was like, nah, I don't really like the melody or anything about it.
Yeah.
So then it became like a pseudo love song that I was like, yeah, it's a pretty good song. And then after recording all of that, I was like, no, I'm going to start from scratch again. And that's when the final version came out, and I think it's actually my favorite song on the album now. But yeah,
awesome.
So kind of like sometimes, like I think the opening lyrics to that song came to me right as I was about to fall asleep, like I was nodding off, and the lyrics popped in my head, and I like just reached for my phone, wrote them down, and passed out. And I kind of woke up and was like, oh yeah, I think I kind of remember how the melody went for this. So kind of had to figure that out. But yeah.
Yeah, I've had. I'm a writer, so it's in my sleep sometimes. Especially if I've had too much coffee during the day, like past 2 p.m. I wake. I can't sleep, and I'm just like thinking of things and story and how to fix that problem so I can jump to the next thing. I get what you're saying. So it's interesting to hear from a musician and songwriter that it's the same thing.
Yeah, I feel like it happens for most like creative things, like anything that involves writing or even maybe with like editing stuff. Like it's happened before with me with like mixing sounds too. You just kind of, when you're least expecting it and you're kind of just back is turned to it, the solution jumps at you and you're like, oh, there it is. Okay.
There it is.
Cool.
Yeah. So does the music come first or the writing, the words?
It really varies on the song. I wish I could say it was one or the
all
other.
Together.
Yeah. Well, there is some like, I don't even know if I could say that. It very rarely comes all together, I'd say. There is the one song on the album, You're So Special. I had written that bass line for it. that because it's like do 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 do, and I was like, it's a really cool bass line. I wrote that like 6 years ago, did nothing with it, and then I was just kind of up early one morning because I had to do something early, and then the rest of my day was free. And I've never been one to be able to just go back to sleep once I wake up early.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just going to sit down with my guitar and figure out if I can do anything with this riff. And I kind of had, I had a bit of guitar. It was just kind of like mimicking I had like a strumming pattern that kind of mimicked the bass line. So I was like, okay, let's just sit down with this. And then all the lyrics and everything came out within 45 minutes. And I was like, okay, let's just record all of this now. So a lot of that song was recorded in a day. And then it kind of took me several months to actually rewrite some of the instrumental bits and stuff like that. But 90% of that song was all written, came out at once in a day, I think. Yeah.
Wow. That's great. So
yeah, it was one of the few times it's happened, though. That very rarely actually works out. Usually I'll spend like a couple days working on one thing and I'll get a couple verses out and then I'll move to something else and kind of just hope for the best, really.
So what's the time frame usually do you spend time on multiple songs at once, or do you spend time on one song at a time?
Yeah, I probably spend on multiple songs at once. Like if I'm like, okay, I got a good chunk out of that song, I'll move on to the next one. But oftentimes it might be because I just kind of finished the album and I want to take a little bit of a break, like at least a couple months before I start just getting into it again.
Can you do that?
Yeah, it's been
tough.
more difficult than I've thought. I actually just the other day, talking about like figuring out things in your sleep, I had a dream where I had a guitar riff and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like in my dream, I heard the riff in my head, if that makes sense. And then in my dream, I was like, oh, that's a good riff. I should work out how to play it on guitar. And I worked out how to play all of it on guitar. And then I woke up being like, does that still work? And I went and played it and was like, oh yeah, my subconscious entirely just worked out how to play a riff out and then just worked.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes it's a little difficult not to get to writing again, but very rarely have I been. Yeah, my brain's always working, trying to figure it out.
Sometimes you need it because, like, not to cut you off, but sometimes you're like, because I stopped for this podcast for the holidays, and I was still like, I couldn't help myself. I brought my microphone to the place I was at, and I interviewed family members because I still had the thing in me. It's weird how that works, but still, before I went on a break, I was like, I need a break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really
there you
weird.
Go. Your brain wants it. Yeah.
But even that being said, I am not really one to like be like, all right, I have a day off, I'm going to sit down and write a song. It usually just kind of comes at me and I'm like, oh, I need to figure this out. Like it kind of either the music or the lyrics will just kind of pop into my head. And I'm like, oh, I need to sit down real quick and do this. And doing that enough times comes up with, I guess, a full album of music. I don't know how it happens, but it does.
So what was the time frame for you to finish the album? How long did it take you? The whole process, how long?
Start to finish, it was probably like 2 years. But that was the reason it's going back so far, I think, is because the first song I wrote and recorded for the album, which was Smaller Than Some, the title track, because it was just a very simple song that I kind of like made up a lot of the lyrics on the spot almost. I did that basically right when I graduated. So I was kind of like back home in Collingwood for a couple months, didn't have a lot to do except apply for jobs. And I just like went into my closet back in Collingwood and recorded that whole song.
Right.
And pretty much, I don't think I changed a whole lot of it since that recording. So that's why it goes back 2 years. But I feel like once I did that song, I didn't do anything for maybe like 7 or 8 months. It was kind of a long break. And then finally when I started getting going again. So if you don't include that, it was probably like a year or so. Yeah.
And what was the time frame for the editing process until it was released?
Oh, the editing.
Was that included in the 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because a lot of it, I would write and record and mix all like this one song when one song isn't even finished being written.
Yeah.
And some songs I would actually write it while I'm mixing everything together. Like I'm like, oh, I need another thing here. Let's just plug in a keyboard and see what I can figure out kind of on the spot. And then I might find something I like and then work that so it's a little more clean into everything. But yeah, so they kind of overlapped a lot. But the editing always takes so much longer than I think it is going to. It's
I'm sure.
Unreal.
Are you a perfectionist?
A little bit, yeah. For this album, there were a lot of things where I was like, I could spend so much longer on this, but I just want the album to be done. So I'm going to call it done, and it is how it is. My original idea for having this album was to have it out by last February. Okay. Which was a while ago. I even like had one of my friends. I was like, "Hey, can you work on some artwork? Don't worry about too much, but I want to have it done within like 2 months." And she was like, "Okay, sure." And then 9 months later, finally, I have it done. It's a whole thing because I basically had the entire album finished except for like 2 songs, and then I got those 2 songs done and listened back and was like, "No, I can do better," and just went back. Yeah. Basically to the beginning and didn't re-record things much, but I was kind of like, no, these songs aren't good enough. And I feel like I can do them better. And I went back and did it all again. So it probably took an extra like 9 months than what I was originally expecting it to.
So February 2020 was your goal, right?
Yeah.
And then COVID happened. Didn't have anything to do with
COVID,
the slowing down?
No, if anything,
it helped.
Initially, it helped because I've been working consistently, but there was about a week and a half where my work shut down. So in that week and a half, I finished like 5 songs. I was like, this is great. And then went back to work, had to find time. And I guess in that time when I finished the other songs, I went back to those original ones that I finished in a week and was like, yeah, no, these aren't good enough. Yeah. And would either like there's some songs where I even like wrote new words to them and re-recorded all the vocals and changed the choruses because I wasn't happy with them. It'd be interesting to release some of the songs that I originally intended to release a year ago now, because I'm like, to me, they seemed finished. And then I went back and listened and was like, never mind, they're not finished. So it'd be interesting to, I think, gauge people's reactions to see if they would also be like, oh yeah, these aren't as good. Or some people might be like, oh, I actually like that original version better. You spent way too much time on this. Yeah.
Yeah. That's always something I think about too.
Oh yeah, I can imagine as a writer for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of thinking, and it's a lot of did I mess this up or should I keep working on it? You know,
nothing stays buried forever. Especially not the past.
Yesterday is Not Yet Gone, a mystery novel by Gabriel Veiga, host of the Very Creative Podcast. Available now, paperback and digital. GabrielVeiga.com. Buy it now.
Speaking about that, who do you trust in your family or in your friends group, or do you trust people to give you constructive criticism? Who are your key people?
Not really. I have a pretty regular group of people I send stuff to, but it's usually just be like, hey, look at this cool thing I did. I'm not looking for any feedback.
I'm not looking for any feedback.
Not looking for any feedback. 'Cause
that's interesting.
It's usually like one of 2 things. Either like I'll send it to like my dad and he'll be like, wow, I love it. I'm like, cool, that's good. Or he's like, there's a weird bit at 2 minutes and 43 seconds. And I'll like go to the song and I'm like, oh yeah, I like that bit. I'm not changing it. It's like just weird. Like I am a bit of a control freak when it comes to music. So I think that's why I don't like, I send my music out to people. If they do give me feedback, I tend not to listen. Yeah. I think that's also why, going back to like why I decided to do a solo album, even though I was writing most of it, there were a couple run-ins with either people not doing an instrument or a vocal thing exactly how I pictured it. And I'm like, I don't like it. It could even be great, but in my head, I'm like, that's different as how I planned it. I don't want to do that. So that could either be a good thing for this album, or it could have been my downfall. I'm not sure. Maybe if I got more feedback from people, I could have made some stuff better, but I don't know.
I mean, feedback is hard. It's hard to trust people. It really is hard. I've learned a lot from feedback. I've learned a lot from bad feedback too. And I think it makes you stronger too, to just, am I taking this or am I just following my heart? And it's really tough. It's really tough. You know, I don't know what it is for you, but it seems like you know what you want to do and that's it. But for me, it's really, really tough. It took a long time for me to say, no, I don't want that.
Yeah, I feel like that it kind of shows how, depending on the thing they kind of give you feedback about, obviously, but I feel like it shows how much you like a certain thing. If they're like, ooh, you should change this. And you're like, you know what? I'm putting my foot down. I actually stand by this. I think it's a great thing. That's not to say like I never took any feedback, but yeah, for the most part, it's kind of like, I'm going to put my foot down and say, I like this, even though you don't. And I'm going to put it in the song.
Especially if you've done this for a while, like you've tested some things out, then like I have been writing for over probably 10 years now. So,
oh, wow. Yeah.
You know, since I was a kid, and so not to say that I'm the best at it, not to say that I can't learn anymore. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just know where I came from and where I'm here because I worked so much on it, you know? So it's hard to trust people who haven't gone on the same journey as you.
Yeah.
I feel.
I think that makes sense.
It gives you experience.
You have a good opinion, but I have some experience. Let's kind of see which one wins, I guess. Yeah.
But like you said, it could be your downfall sometimes. You could fail big just because of that. Yeah,
it's a risky thing, I guess.
It's on your terms. So
that's I was actually listening to a podcast on the Talking Heads just yesterday.
Okay.
And they had the keyboardist and guitarist Jerry Harrison on, and he was talking about how bands, when a band releases music, very rarely do they have something that completely flops. Whereas solo artists, it happens more frequently because they have no one to tell them no. Like in the Talking Heads, they kind of had to vote on a lot of things, and if David Byrne came up with an idea that no one else liked, they would veto it. They would kind of be like, you know what, that's a cool idea, but it's not going to work. Whereas with me, I was kind of like, no one's telling me no. I can do whatever I want. And I changed a whole lot of things that maybe shouldn't have been changed, but in the end, I'm like, I'm happy with it. Yeah. So
that's what matters, right? Though.
Yeah.
If you're happy with it.
I like, as
your
long
own
as I like the
happiness should
music,
more matter than anything else, you know?
I think there's a few songs, not even a few. There's maybe like 2 songs on the album that I'm like, meh, they're fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not super hot on them, but maybe it's because I just had to spend too much time listening to them.
Probably is.
Probably. Yeah. But there are quite a few songs on my album that I'm like, I don't care if no one else in the world likes this. This is a bop, and I'm into it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool because I've had, and then we'll move on, but I've had, like I often think about the audience, and that's what gives me like struggles, you know, in my writing sometimes, because I think what people think and what are people going to think? And then like it blocks me. And that's usually my block, where it comes from. And that's nothing to do with me. It has to do with other people. And I can't control that. And I had to figure that out. And I still have to figure that out. Yeah.
It's not a bad block to have, especially if you're trying to make money off your art, I think.
Exactly.
It's like, I could be like, doesn't matter what anyone thinks. I'm making this for me. And then no one wants to buy my album. And I'm like, well, why not?
For sure. But if you're doing, there's an argument to be made that if you're doing what the audience wants, it's not original anymore.
That's true. This is true. If you're just trying to pump out some hits,
it's not you. It's just
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I feel like I think I've talked about Of Montreal a few times now, but they are one of my favorite bands, and they every album is different.
Repeat.
Of Montreal.
Of Montreal. Are they from Montreal?
Yeah, they are not. They're from Athens, Georgia.
Okay.
But yeah, it's mostly just one guy. Like originally it was a full band, and then they've had like, I don't know, 14 or 15 albums at this point.
Right.
In the last half of them have just been one guy in a recording studio. And he's great, but every album is fairly different than the last. Like he's really not making this for the audience, but he found an audience that likes to adapt with him. And I like to think that's the kind of audience I would have at some point.
Yeah.
So I'm like, they're going to be with me when I change directions a little bit. And they're kind of like, okay, this is different, but I'm also into it. This is kind of what you aim for, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, that's the goal, to build your audience, to to make some like followers, I guess, that are really into the word of followers. They'll follow you anywhere. Not followers on Instagram, like followers. Yeah,
like a cult.
Yeah,
exactly.
Are you a cult leader?
I want to be a cult leader, I think, is my goal of music. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good goal.
Yeah.
So your album is released.
It is.
And what is the reaction once you released it?
It's been pretty good. I haven't gotten any criticism on it, but I feel like if anyone did that, that's just because they're mean.
See, I'm talking about the audience and not thinking about it, and then I'm asking that question. But I think it's interesting.
Yeah, like I feel like if anyone were to reach out and be like, "Hey, I listened to your album," I'm like, "Oh, that's great. What'd you think of it?" And they're like, "I didn't like it." That's just, I don't think anyone would. If they didn't like it, I feel like they just wouldn't say anything. But the people I have shown it to have been like, "Oh, this is really good. I can tell you spent a lot of work, and like a lot of this is very like personal to you." And they're like, "I can tell you had fun recording this music." And I'm like, "Okay, that's good." So I think, for the most part, it's been a pretty warm reception.
Yeah.
I am currently, because this is all released independently. Like I'm not signed to anything.
Yeah.
But I recently did reach out to Dent Records, which is I think they're UK based. I can't say for sure, but I think they're UK based.
Okay.
They started in August, and I kind of reached out to them. I was like, "Hey, I don't know if you are looking for anyone. Here's my music." And they got back to me because it's instead of being like signed to their label, they'll do PR for you. Yeah. But they only charge per thing that they can get done for you. Whereas most places like, give us $400 and we'll see what we can do. This place is like, we're gonna charge you every time we get it on a radio station or something like that.
Okay.
And they don't charge too much. So I'm like, you know what? Sure. I didn't spend any money producing this album. I'll throw a little bit of money at promoting it. So I'm hoping now it'll get to a wider audience. Because right now, a lot of the audience is people I know personally or like friends of friends.
Yeah.
Who I feel like would listen to it. Even if they didn't like it, they'd be like, I'll throw this on because my friend made it kind of thing. But I'm hoping with getting some more press out there and some more streams on a outside of Canada audience would be good.
Yeah.
Though I'll get people that like it for what it is, not just because I made it kind of thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know you, and I was
that's great.
It, so
really happy
really
about
my
that.
style. So who knew?
It worked out well.
And I didn't even like search for you or know you because you just reached out to me, and that I liked your album after researching you. So
that's great. That worked out well. I'm glad.
So you're already on a good path. Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't like a huge country fan or anything, and that would have just made this a really boring interview.
Well, I'm a Taylor Swift fan, but
okay, that's kind of country. Earlier stuff is country, later stuff's more poppy, and then the last two albums, I guess, were folky. I haven't listened to Evermore or Folklore. I haven't listened to them, but I've heard they're great.
Best.
Yeah,
Folklore is the best. Yeah,
I know it was produced by the guy from The National, or he helped produce it at least. So
yeah,
I can see how it'd be good.
Great.
Yeah.
So, do you have another album in the process? After that? Or do you write just songs and then you'll see?
There's definitely, like, I can say with certainty that there's going to be another album. When or what it'll sound like, I have no clue.
Yeah.
I have a couple songs that are in the works of like, okay, I kind of have like a verse down and stuff. So it's probably going to be another bit of a wait before I have anything, but I can say certainly that there will be another album. Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah. Is it going to be in the same style? Do you know? No.
I hope so. I do like the style. I think I might lean into it even a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because like I said, a couple of the songs were written before I got into this style. So I kind of had to like try and convert them into what it was after it's written differently. Whereas now I'm already in this place. I'll kind of move with it. That is, unless I discover a new favorite band in the next year that it's totally different. I'm like, ooh, let's change into this rockabilly style or something like that. I have no idea. But it'll probably be similar. I have a few songs in mind that are very strictly like, when I'm writing them in my head and kind of recording them a little bit, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a synthesizer part. This is going to be electronic drums. They're going to be doing this. So it's already in my head. It sounds the same, but who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
It might change.
It might change.
I can't say for certainty. I can't certainly say anything really, but yeah. I hope so.
The big NDA that you signed.
Yeah. Warner Brothers would be furious with me. Yeah.
Your NDA of your home. Oh, great. So one of my last questions before we move on to our game.
Okay.
Anxiety. How do you have creative anxiety, and how do you deal with that?
I'd say I do, but I feel like the anxiety comes out more when I'm trying to actually build a project. Like writing a song, I have anxiety about a bunch of stuff, just life in general. But I feel like when I'm writing a song, I'm like, this is a pretty good song. And it's not until I start recording and mixing it with the intent to like share it with people that I'm like, oh, this is getting a little bit real. And that's when I think a little bit of pressure can kick in. But I also do have a pretty good support team of a guaranteed audience that's going to be like, I like this no matter what it is. So it's, I never really fear any like poor feedback or reception or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's not too bad.
We talked about it earlier.
Yeah.
You feel
we
that.
Did. So yeah, I guess I do have a little bit, but I feel like it's not as prevalent as it is in other people, I guess. Yeah.
So
I don't know. Maybe it's just me being overly confident with my own songwriting and stuff. But I'm like, no, I like this song. Let's just do it. But the pressure can get to me, but it's never too overwhelming, I'd say.
Yeah. So you just to solve it, you just keep doing it, or
just plow through. If like there were a couple times when I was recording this album, especially like going back to me saying I don't really like my own vocals. I would like record it all and like I'm like, yeah, I wrote this song. I like how the music sounds and everything. And I listen back to the vocals and I'm like, good Lord.
Anxiety?
Good Lord. I shouldn't even be touching a microphone. There's been times when I'm like, maybe I should just like reach out to my old singer and we'll make this just a Modest Apollo album again. I don't know. But yeah, like towards the end is when I was like, okay, I became more comfortable with it. And I feel like that was probably the biggest hurdle and source of my anxiety with making stuff is becoming okay with my own voice.
Yeah.
And now that I have, it's like, not that I'm fully comfortable with it. I'm still a little bit self-conscious, but I feel like the confidence, once you become comfortable with it, it sounds better to everyone, not just you. Because then you become comfortable, you can confident, and it's like, oh, even if he's not a great like vocalist, I'm no Michael Bublé or anything, but it's like he's given it though, and
no one is like Michael Bublé.
Yeah, no one. I feel like it kind of, you can see that it's the confidence is there in the voice. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself like, because for me to deal with anxiety, I I work out a lot and
Okay,
like
yeah.
just spend time doing like not lifting weights or anything, but cardio. I need to move sometimes
Yeah.
and just like do that or go take a walk with my dog or just I like that leads me to my game, but I watch feel good things too. You know, I'm just always in front of the screen and just looking at things that make me escape. So yeah, do you do any of that or?
Yeah, I feel like most of the time I just need, if I'm in my own head too much, I just need some kind of external distraction. So I have done like working out and stuff, but I feel like instead of more cardio based stuff, well, I guess it could be cardio based. Just anything that requires me to think about what I'm doing,
Yeah.
as opposed to like I think if I were to just go on a walk or something like that, my mind would still be circling around the
Oh,
thing.
really? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it would stay in there a little bit too much. That's why I like similarly like
It's
maybe
hard,
like
right? It's really
yeah,
hard.
like either feel good shows or just any show that I can kind of get immersed in,
Yeah.
or I don't know, just playing games with like my roommates
Yeah.
or partner, something like that. We've gotten really into the game, the Ellen game, Heads Up. It's not, Ellen didn't make the game, but she has like the
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
popular version of it. Kind of doing that, and then like we found a way to like make our own deck, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like just almost like just little games that can distract me, kind of take my mind off whatever it is that's spiraling going on.
It's so hard. It's so
Oh
hard.
yeah.
Like
But,
I've gotten better. I don't know if it's because I'm 24 now or I'm not old, but it's like through the years, I feel like I'm going better, growing better. And now, like I had a guest on this podcast, and he was like, "Just work from 8 to 5. Like, just even if you don't have that time, like if you don't work at a regular job that's from 8 to 5, just work from that 8 to 5, and then forget about it." And I tried it, and it's working a little
it
bit.
does work. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and
I
then
feel
at,
like-
at 5, I forget about it. I just move on to my things, and I don't feel bad because I worked that time frame. You know.
Yeah, I feel like
So I
that's
don't know.
a
Yeah.
good way to do it for sure. Just kind of if you give yourself a schedule,
And I don't
like
think
a
about the audience
regimen.
anymore.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. Maybe if doing music was my full-time job, I'd be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I think since I'm just doing it on my free time, it's essentially just a hobby that I put too much time into.
Yeah.
It can kind of sit a little bit longer. However, since I don't give myself a time frame on things, I feel like that eases up the pressure a lot. I don't have a deadline to get an album done. That's why when it didn't get done in February, like I originally planned, I was like, I'll get done eventually because I'm not under a contract. I don't have a label breathing down my neck for the next hit or anything like that. So it's kind of, it helps. It definitely helps.
Yeah. Well,
Being so independent.
you're on a good path, and I really like your album. So my game.
Okay, yeah, I love games.
Yeah, it's a feel good game. So it goes a little bit with my question that I had earlier. So what's your, let's start with music since you're a musician. What's your feel good song?
Ooh.
You want to feel good. What do you listen to?
I think I'm going to give two fairly different answers. So I think it might be Dance Yourself Clean by LCD Sound System as one of them. Just because when that, I don't know if you're familiar with the song.
Not at all. Yeah.
It's 9 minutes long or so. And the first 3 minutes is like he actually mixed it quieter so people will turn up the speaker. So like the first 3 minutes is kind of like a slow, like little synthy thing. You're like, okay. And then about 3 minutes in, it just kicks in much louder than before. And it's a very simple groove, but it gets me going every time. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is good. Okay. And the other answer I think I have is All Together Now by the Beatles, which is much more of like a simple, silly song. But
Happy song, right?
It's a very happy song.
Yeah.
It's very like da 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 da. Like it's very upbeat and poppy and silly. And I think since the first time I heard it back in like high school or even earlier. I was like, this song never fails to make me smile. It's fun. Yeah. So
that
those are
helps
two.
me with anxiety for sure.
Oh yeah, I think those are two answers from different periods in my life, but they have the same effect, I guess. Yeah.
What album makes you feel good?
Oh,
The entire thing.
entire album. Let's see. I think it might be Hissing Fauna, Are You the Destroyer by Of Montreal.
Okay.
Just because the first time I'd ever listened to that album was when I was going through a bit of like a hard time in high school.
Okay.
And I kind of listened to all of it and I'm like, this is a really good album. That's when I kind of really got into them. And now when I listen to it, it's not a super happy album. It's not a super feel good album all around, but the music is very upbeat. And I think just because I have associations with it of it making me feel better and getting out of a slump, it kind of like resonates still today. Yeah. So probably that.
Yeah. So feel good movie.
Let's see. Maybe like Wayne's World. I don't know.
Okay.
I think Wayne's World's a good answer. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
I think no, I don't think I've watched it. I remember something as a kid, but I don't think I finished it. Yeah.
Highly advise it. The first one. It's been several years since I've watched it. Like it's probably either Wayne's World or Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Still have to watch that too.
That's also a incredible movie. All of these are just really dumb and funny. And the last one's Airplane.
Yeah.
Which is
that a parody one?
It kind of parodies just like generic airplane like type movies, like adventure movies. But it's if you haven't seen it, you probably know the line where it's like, "Surely you can't be serious," and he says like, "I'm serious, and don't call me Shirley." That's from that movie, and it's full of gems like that. Like at one point, I don't know why I remember this one. But there's like a crisis in the airplane, and then back at mission control, he's like, "Johnny, what can you make of this map?" And he's like, "Well, I could make a hat or a little bird." And it's just the dumbest movie, but it's so funny. And any one of those three, I think, just because they're dumb comedies that never fail to make me laugh.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Last thing, feel good TV show.
Oh, okay. TV show. Should have been expecting this with the other ones.
You should. Should have.
Let's see.
Like if you follow the trend, you should have expected anything.
I've also listened to the podcast before in preparation, and I know it was one of the things, and I still didn't come up with an answer.
It's usually the reaction from people. And I said, "Here's a game."
Yeah. What would be a good one? Maybe I think I'm picking this one almost certainly because I watched it somewhat recently. Is Nathan For You. Are you familiar?
Nope.
It's a Comedy Central show, and it's Nathan Fielder, who's this he's a comedian, but he went to business school in Vancouver. And essentially he just goes to like small businesses that aren't doing super well, and he gives them ideas, and this is all real. Like it's not scripted. And he's the only one that's in on the joke. So he'll give them just ridiculous ideas, and they have to. And he's like, "Do you want to try out this new business idea?" And they're like, "Okay." Like one of them is he goes to a gas station. He's like, "We're going to sell your gas for super cheap, like cheaper than anyone in town."
Yeah.
And in order for the people to get the gas for cheap, they have to do a rebate, but they have to bring the rebate to the top of a mountain and answer a series of riddles to do it.
Oh, wow.
It's like just really dumb stuff like that. And that's probably one show that if I throw on will make me feel better. It's so cringy and dumb, but it's very good.
Yeah. I have a lot of stuff to listen to and watch then. Thank you.
Yeah. Highly advise all of them.
Well, do you want to plug your album again and where people can check it out?
Yeah, for sure. So the album is called Smaller Than Some, and the artist name is Other Infinities. You can listen to it anywhere you stream music, Spotify, Apple Music. It's on Instagram Music now. If you are
There's something in Instagram Music?
Oh yeah, you can get it's on Instagram Music, which isn't like a streaming service, but if you
for your stories.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
It took a lot more time for a lot of distributors to get it onto TikTok and Instagram Music than like Spotify and stuff.
Okay, right.
So that's a thing. Yeah, it's on all the streaming services. And then if you're interested in a cassette, the cassette comes with a digital download. You can go to my Bandcamp at otherinfinitiesmusic.bandcamp.com.
Awesome.
And that's
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is the first podcast I've done to try and promote it. I'm trying to get a few more, but who knows?
Yeah.
This is
It's
so
been
far
a
this is
fun
the best one.
conversation. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
No,
it has been fun. Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun. It's always, that's why I started this podcast. It's always fun to talk to different creative people and not just writers, for me,
Yeah.
musicians and other people.
Am I the first musician on the podcast?
Yeah. You're
Okay.
the first I've had singers before, but not musicians. Yeah.
I've listened to the reason I actually reached out to you, Maxine Grossman. Yeah. So she was on the podcast and I just know her from, I met her once at a party. Yeah. And so I was kind of listening to her episode and I was like, hey, let's listen to a musician one so I can know what kind of questions to ask. And there just wasn't one other than like singers. And I'm like, okay.
I just started the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. You already have quite a few episodes. It's impressive.
Yeah. Well, I love doing it. So
that's great.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. And
thanks for having me.
Check out his music, Smaller Than Some by Other Infinities, right? So
Other Infinities,
Josh White, thank you so much.
Perfect.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Very Creative Podcast with Gabriel Veiga. To find out more, go to gabrielveiga.com/podcast or find us on social media at The Very Creative Podcast. You can also watch the podcast on YouTube. Just search for The Very Creative Podcast and subscribe.